We are so glad to have you, whether this is your first time joining our series, we're glad you're here, and if you're returning to get more professional development insight, I think you'll really enjoy this evening's program. If you're not familiar with Women in Autonomy, Women in Autonomy was formed about a year ago to educate, equip, and empower women in the automotive and auto tech space. And our goal is really to create leaders and change makers in this space so female voices can be better heard and represented. And we set about to do a little bit of that through our Equip mission in the Accelerate Summer Series. And we've had some really fun sessions. Beginning in June, we did a personal branding workshop. And then in July, we talked about how to communicate to influence. And we're wrapping up the summer series with our mentoring workshop. Super excited about tonight's program. We have some fierce female speakers with us tonight for our Mentoring 101 talk who are going to share a lot of wisdom. Indulge me while I share a bit of their background with you because they're quite impressive. Karen Clopton is a San Francisco Human Rights Commissioner and DEI attorney. She has an illustrious career of many firsts, historic firsts. Some of those are, she is the first African-American California Public Utilities Commission Chief Administrative Law Judge. She's the first African-American elected president of the League of Women Voters of San Francisco. And she's the first African-American woman appointed to the San Francisco Civil Service Commission. We also have Nicole DeMeo, who is literally and figuratively a woman of many hats. Nicole is a consulting CMO and founder of Outfront Solutions. She's an investor and a women's leadership advocate. Nicole is what you would definitely call a Silicon Valley insider. She's spent her career helping some of the most famous people and companies in Silicon Valley make a name for themselves, including Steve Jobs, Eric Schmidt, and Carly Fiorina. She has helped to raise over $500 million in private and public markets as an executive advisor and board member. And she is all about elevating women. She's an advisor to How Women Lead and How Women Invest, which is a new venture fund that supports women-led companies with a focus on women of color. So with that, welcome, ladies.
Hello. Thanks for the introduction, Jennifer. It's really nice to be here with everyone today.
Well, we're so glad to have you both. Yes, just thank you for saying yes. I think you have so much insight. You know, mentorship discussion can be women from any industry. We have a lot to teach each other, I think. And I want to remind people, as I get ready to hand it off, we will, after this discussion, have a chance to have a little Q&A. So please make use of the chat box, put your questions in there, and we'll take on those questions after Nicole and Karen have had a chance to chat. I'll leave it to you two.
All right, great, excellent. What I thought I'd do is just provide a little bit of an outline of what we'll talk about today. So we will just touch on why we're passionate about mentorship, a little bit more maybe about our backgrounds and why we're passionate about mentorship. We want to set the foundation with the How Women Lead Credo. We think it's a great way to start any conversation among women especially. We will talk about some of the building blocks of successful mentorship and mentorship philosophies. We'll share some personal stories and anecdotes from influential mentors in our lives. And we'll talk about mentorship across gender identification, race, culture, ethnicity, generations. And then we'll conclude with a few practical tips about finding and engaging mentors. So we have a juicy discussion today. Looking forward to it. So Karen, how about, would you like to kick us off with maybe just a little bit more about your background and why you're passionate about mentorship?
Well, essentially, I've always been passionate about mentoring, which we probably didn't call it that back in high school or before, but our peers inspire us and we learn from each other, and that's one of the things I'll be talking about today. is how important it is for us, especially as women in male-dominated professions. It's important for us to help each other. My first experience with mentorship was in high school with Girls Week. I don't know if you recall having a Girls Week in high school, but I was paired with a woman attorney, Ramona Romano, in Los Angeles. And for the week, I shadowed her. And it made a tremendous impact on my choice of career and my ability to see myself in her. And then my freshman year in college at Vassar, I met on the college steps a senior who was African American, who befriended me and mentored me. We had the same major, Hispanic studies, and she really helped me learn the ropes. Same thing in law school. As a first year, I met and befriended a third year who helped introduce me to how things work. In the workplace, my mentor was Alan Finner, who couldn't have been more different than myself, being an older white male, seasoned attorney when I worked in the general counsel's office at the National Labor Relations Board in Washington, D.C. But he was just lovely and remains a wonderful friend and someone that I can go to. He was able to not just be a supervisor or a manager or someone who was in a superior, as it were, position, but always treated me as a colleague, as a peer in his approach. And I was open to learning and constructive feedback. And so all of those experiences really created a passion in me to mentor others. So my first mentoring program that I developed was for African American middle schoolers, ages 11 to 13 in San Francisco. And what inspired me to start that program, which we called the Sister to Sister program, was because of all of the studies and research that had been done that showed that girls lose their self-esteem in those early years, in those middle school years from 11 to 13, that they think they're not good at science or math or all the things that the technology and the automobile industry value. And so this program, you know, I learned a lot about how to create contracts between mentors and mentees, how to get buy-in and commitment, whether it's time, talent, or treasure from our mentors, and of course, a commitment of time and respect from the mentees. We had career days, we had outings, and it was really about exposure as well as putting in some time, which doesn't have to be every week or every day or every small problem, but making a commitment like that makes a difference to young people.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I have somewhat similar, but of course, you know, different experiences with mentorship. You know, mentorship mentoring others and having mentors has completely changed the course of my life. I've been fortunate to encounter people who, speaking of science, in my, when I was 13, I had a science teacher take me aside and say that he witnessed the fact that maybe I wasn't stepping forward with as much confidence. And he told me that I was bright and brilliant and capable of everything I could imagine. And so, thank you, Mr. Darashek, because he really, truly changed the course of my life, and showed me that I was capable in different areas. But it went from, for me, also in high school and middle school and high school. In high school, I was involved in dance and cheerleading. The basic setup for a career in marketing was being head cheerleader. um, and so in that type of environment, we also had a mentoring program with the women in the younger grades, and that proved to be really supportive. And there was one particular teacher who I'll never forget, who basically said to large groups of women, never have expectations, and really taught us deep value systems. She actually taught us to meditate before we engage in cheerleading, and she gave us guidelines, much like the How Women Lead Credo that we'll mention here soon. So from middle school, high school, through the earliest days of my career, and I'll tell some stories later, through to working for people like Eric Schmidt, and Steve Jobs, who were incredible mentors, and all the way through, my career up to now. And Karen, I see you as a mentor, and I'm gonna want to tell that story because of how informed and generous and amazing you are. And so, it really truly has set the course of my life. So I feel really privileged to be having this conversation today with all of you, with you, Karen, and to be discussing this topic. So let us jump into maybe quickly the How Women Lead Credo, because I always feel like that's such a great way to kick off speaking in any situation. And so it's in front of you now, and it's just a really amazing credo that those of us who are also a part of the How Women Lead organization. So by the way, that's an organization of 13,000 women in all different stages of their leadership growth. And there's a ton of programming, so if you're intrigued, just check it out. But this is also how Karen and I found each other in the world, is we participated in a How Women Lead, a retreat in Cuba earlier this year. So this just sets the tone for today, I think, and for all women as they engage. So number one being, be fierce advocates for each other. Number two, saying yes to helping and connecting each other. That's what we're doing today, stepping into our yes and connecting each other. And by the way, Jen will speak to, or someone on the team with Women in Autonomy will speak to a way that everybody in the organization can connect as part of this to carry on the mentorship programming, if you will. The third one is reinforce her voice when she speaks up and isn't heard. How many times have you been in a room with, a lot of times maybe all men or what have you, there's one other woman in the room. When a woman speaks up, it's super important to reinforce her voice, and just no matter what her opinion is, it's just important to do that, to amplify women And then fourth is get out there and be unabashedly visible. So also something that sometimes women aren't as comfortable with, but it's really important for us to do. So we just wanted to share the How Women Lead Credo. So thank you for sharing that slide for us. I guess.
What's great about the credo is
Yeah.
that it's kind of a basic outline for mentorship.
Yeah, it truly is super applicable to outlining that. Yeah, and just just to mention the How Women Lead organization, there isn't a membership fee. If you want to engage with the programming, we highly recommend it. Karen, maybe you want to touch on the different aspects of the organization that you're a part of.
Well, in terms of a mentoring project that they're engaged in, and that's how women join corporate boards and how to be prepared to join a corporate board. The leadership of How Women Lead were deeply involved in the legislative initiatives in California uh, to have women on boards starting this year in 2020. And it's through their vision that women are required to be on boards now, which is fantastic.
Yeah, huge.
So they have a series of workshops of preparation. And as part of that preparation, there are small groups that form that are mentoring groups to work on all kinds of things, your board bio, your CV, etc. And
Yeah.
so that's really great. And also there's C-suite preparation and the opportunity to meet mentors and women who are CEOs, CFOs, and who are at the table. So helping all of us to get that folding chair up to the table.
Yeah, yeah. So there's that board, that really important Getting Women on Boards initiative. There's a very large philanthropy, and this being Black Philanthropy Month. That's a really neat, beautiful initiative, and there's lots of great programming around that. And
Yes,
then,
I was fortunate to share my experience as a philanthropist and in changing the face of philanthropy, that absolutely Black people, African Americans in the US are one of the greatest philanthropists in our population, but a lot of people don't realize that it's an opportunity lost by several nonprofits.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, that's,
August is Black Philanthropy Month. But yeah, so let's talk about cross-cultural mentoring and what that looks like.
yeah, sounds good. Yeah, well, in terms of, you know, I think for me, so many times, I mean, as I mentioned, in terms of mentorship, I'm thinking of just cross gender identification and cultural and ethnicity and different generations. That to me is such the richness of life, right? Those are the opportunities where we can be exposed to or woken up in some cases. And as I mentioned before, you're an absolute mentor to me, Karen, because you are so incredibly informed about the Black American experience and history, and it's not just in this country, globally. And by you sharing that information with me, I can absolutely learn and grow. And I think that's one of the neatest things about being, having different genders and age groups for mentoring, and also really experiencing mentoring from a co-mentoring standpoint. I always feel like there are other perspectives and absolutely everyone. Even if you are mentoring someone, they've got a different life perspective. They've got great insight in the world. And so I've never thought of mentorship as one way. I've always thought of it as co-mentoring and going both ways.
I think you have a great point there with the co-mentoring, and that it goes both ways. I think that it's essential that mentors and mentees, or mentors and proteges, or however you wish to look at that, that it's a mutually beneficial relationship. While a mentor is being a great support, a teacher, a counselor, an advocate, and one would hope a protector, if need be,
Yeah.
of the mentee. You know, I think it's also important for the mentor to view themselves as a colleague and present themselves as a colleague. Because what mentors do really is to advocate on behalf of the mentee, share resources, acquire knowledge, and share that knowledge, serve as a role model, right?
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of that. And of course, share wisdom and advise, but do so in not a, oh, the senior person knows everything. That doesn't really, it's not effective. So being in this mutual learning environment where the mentor is listening as well as advising, learning as well as teaching, makes for a more successful relationship.
Yeah. And if I may just kind of add on two more things to that really lovely list you made, was creating a safe space, right? It's just, there's so much to the importance of creating a safe space to be able to ask the questions that maybe you're a little shy, embarrassed, you know, not less confident about asking in a greater environment. And so creating a safe space to be able to exchange information, learn from each other, what have you, just seems like one of those huge aspects of a building block of a great mentorship. And then I guess I would also say being straightforward, providing feedback, because sometimes you don't necessarily have that type of relationship. Maybe it's a boss or somebody that you're reporting to, or a client, or what have you. And in anyway, the point being that is such a critical aspect of mentorship, is just to provide straightforward feedback for people. I crave it, and so I feel more comfortable asking for that in a mentorship situation, co-mentorship situation.
Well, I think that is really essential, that the mentee be ready, right? The mentee has to be ready for a mentorship relationship, has to want it, and be open and open-minded about it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's important to be ambitious, right? To want to learn from someone who is more experienced or more senior. But it's also important for the mentee to actively seek that constructive feedback and be willing to act on the constructive feedback, and commit the time to an effort to improve or change certain ways of doing things. This willingness, I think, to explore new behaviors is one of the keys to success here. But why should someone who is more senior and experienced and busy, right? We do need to address that, right? We're a very busy society. We're very busy people, even sheltering in place. We're very busy. We have meetings, we have our own work, we're trying to be productive. How does mentorship foster productivity?
Yeah, and it usually it's a bigger cause. It's a bigger, we're looking out beyond ourselves to not only leave a legacy, but to create opportunity and impact for others. And I will tell you a couple of situations that, you know, kicked me back, a bit. One of them being I was in a CMO role in a company and we had raised a large amount of money and we had a majority owner come in and work with us. And, after about, it almost came to the 1 year lockup point, and the executive team with the purchasing company came in and kicked me out of the business, and they did it because I was a woman, largely. And I mean, they kicked out a co-founder as well, but they kicked me out early because they just didn't want to deal with having a woman at the table. And when I had that experience, I went out and I very specifically decided that I was going to do two things in my career. With my marketing background, I was going to go out and I was going to represent women, and I was going to help women build their personal brands and or advance in their leadership roles. So commitment one. Commitment two is, and I'm a part of the How Women Invest Fund, which we just announced our first close, woohoo, of $5 million. And that's a fund that invests in women. And I just want to see women get into each point in the investment cycle and the venture cycle where we're LPs, limited partners, investing in female fund managers, investing in female founders. And by the way, that our particular fund, which Karen, you're a part of course, is predominantly the run and invested by women of color. And that's a baseline, as it should be. We should be reflecting the population. So going outside of ourselves to do things like this creates opportunity and amplification and mentorship for other women to follow.
I want to circle back around to cross-cultural mentorship and mentors identifying mentees and what that can look like. And so our approach not being patronizing or that, oh, I have all this knowledge I'm going to give to this other person or from somewhere else, or vice versa. So how do we ask for some help when we are seeking out mentors, and we're looking for specific skill enhancement. We're looking for support, advice, and that wisdom. And asking for that help, we do need to be cognizant of who we go to, right? So doing our research on the mentor is very important. To go in knowing their background, absolutely, their academic background, their work background, but also what do they like to do? What are their leisure activities? What are their interests? And find a shared commonality, because all of us are essentially the same as humans, right? So if we go about it from the human perspective, because the Human Genome Project has taught us that we're all 99.9% the same DNA, we share the same DNA. And that little 0.1 is like where our ancestors were from in the world because of the topography that might, impact what our hair is like, or our skin color, or the shape of our eyes. Those things are 0.1% of our DNA. And so we have many more commonalities than differences. So when we talk about sharing knowledge and mentoring across difference, I think it's important for us to remember that we're really focused on our commonalities. And so mentors who are identifying themselves, I would like to be a mentor in this particular program, whether it's in the automotive tech industry or other male-dominated industries. If you're a woman who wants to mentor, or if you're a woman who wants to seek a mentor who is a senior male executive, how do you do that without getting into trouble or crossing boundaries that are fraught with landmines? And those landmines are obvious to us all, right? They can be racial, they can be sexual, they can be gender identification or orientation, and they could also just be generational. So we might be looking at a senior white male executive who might have some stereotypical ideas about things, or after you've done your research, you find out this guy is really a good person who is innovative and thinks innovatively and has a bigger picture perspective. So when you're seeking the help or seeking out the mentor, I think that's important. Being a mentor, I think it's important to identify talent, and that talent can be in any shape, size, color, or package, as it were. And so identifying that talent in your space or beyond, whether it's through an association like Women in Autonomy, where you have noticed someone in one of your workshops or groups that you would like to know better because you would like to get more information from them or learn from them in this kind of way. It's important to identify yourself as being open to developing that kind of professional mentorship relationship. I think in terms of mentees being ready, yes, we talked about a little bit about ambition, accepting feedback, and also being responsible, right? Being responsible for yourself as well as what the goals are. I like to use the SMART approach when, after you start that mentoring relationship, that both of you, the mentor and the mentee, or the protege, or the peer mentors, which I think we're fostering that idea more today, the peer mentor, that you agree on your goals and that you apply that SMART approach. And so, it's SMART, that you're specific with your goals, that you measure your progress, and so you develop matrix, that your goals are achievable, that your results are achievable, and that you stay relevant. And in order to achieve all of those things, that you have to have a timeline. And so that is the SMART approach. And so while mentoring is a process, you do need to have goals. And that's an important aspect of this whole thing. When you're acting as a peer, a colleague first, an expert second, a senior person second, You're listening as much as you're speaking. You're setting high expectations of each other, and it's totally mutual, right? I think the last thing that I wanted to note is that you have to establish trust. So developing that trust, showing that that it's not a one-way relationship, that you've done your research and about your mentor, and that as a mentor, you've done your research to help your mentee.
Yeah, yeah, great. Great, great tips. I'm learning with you. I guess I would just add maybe a few other things that I was thinking of as well about, finding and engaging mentors, that, participation in community is really just a phenomenal way to find mentors and co-mentor relationships. So Women in Autonomy is a great organization, and they're going to provide even more structure on that. Usually when I used to speak in person a lot, I would say to everyone, don't leave the room without finding 3 people that you'll follow up with. And sometimes you don't know exactly why right at that moment, that what the richness is, or all those millions of commonalities you'll certainly find. But if somebody's attending an event, they're in a similar mindset, right? They likely shared the values of that organization. So those are great ways to find mentors, is in community. And now online, there are more tools that are coming available. And along the lines of, one of those tools is developing these mastermind groups where people can opt in and sign up to be mentors, mentees, and get paired with each other. So I want to encourage everyone to continue to join in community. Those are great environments to engage and find mentors. I also, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to dovetail on the online, or also the Zoom meeting. Now that we are sheltering in place or social distancing, not going into a workplace, we don't have the kind of social activities and social interaction we used to in order to network and meet people and develop relationships. And so while it might seem a little forced at first, I think it's important for us to look at ways that both in our workplaces, as well as our industries, in order to connect with each other, whether it's in a small group of 4 or 5, being co-mentors with each other, that we find through associations like Women in Autonomy, or in our workplace after one of these Zoom meetings with a lot of people, that you identify someone you wish to be in a smaller group with, to talk about work issues or advancement, or different initiatives that you wish to take within the company. And I think that makes us more productive and certainly more valued. And when you become value added, then you're also protected in your work environment. And you want to encourage, as mentors, I encourage my mentees to become mentors.
Yes,
To,
absolutely.
and I try to set that example and ask them to set that example, to share their learning, and to become a resource for others.
Yeah,
And we
yeah.
can do that in this new environment, because we won't be in this new environment forever, we hope.
Yeah.
but
The
but right
next
now,
normal.
right, we have to forge our own. We have to be creative in connecting with
That's
each other
right.
to lift each
Yeah.
other up.
And along those lines, I just wanted to add that, you know, it's also important to just reach out to those who are already in your network to ask and determine maybe there is someone with a skill set or an area where you want to develop, and reach out, you know, and you know, and seek mentors that way. A lot of times people within your network will already know of people who might just step forward to say yes. And you know, Karen, for you and for myself, I mean, I'm on a mentoring talk for a reason. It's mentoring has changed my life. I raised my hand and I am here for this community, Women in Autonomy. And should you also want to connect, I invite you to do so on LinkedIn. For me is the best way. And if you wouldn't mind, also reference the fact that this is how we met, is at Women in Autonomy. And just as, you know, potentially continue the conversation. Maybe there's an area of expertise that I have, or maybe I know someone who has some expertise in an area that you really care about. So
I think it's important to ask for help, and that there's so many rewards from being a mentor. There's a business case for it. It enhances opportunity. It helps with the organization, succession planning, job satisfaction, career advancement.
yeah,
Mentors gain incredible interpersonal skills, and I believe that we can all do well by doing good.
yeah, yeah, that amplification of each other.
This is such a great discussion, ladies. I'm going to encourage people to put questions into the chat box because I know Nicole and Karen would love to take your questions. I had a question while I was listening to the discussion about peer mentoring. And when it's not sort of the mentor-mentee typical relationship, do you have any advice for how you structure that? Sort of who's responsible for taking the lead? How does that work?
Well, I think that once you identify an opportunity for that within a workplace, unless it's an organized peer mentorship program, if it's an organized peer mentorship program, I recommend starting out with designated coordinators in a 4 or 5 person peer mentorship, but that you have designated coordinators who arrange your email conversation or events or gatherings or Zoom meetings now. That you and then once you have a designated coordinator, they can then rotate that.
Yes,
Uh,
I was
and
gonna say
so
that.
That's a good
again,
idea.
of their mutual expectations of each other within that peer mentorship group, that small group. They figure out together what it is that they plan to focus on, whether it's resume review or problem solving. It's a fantastic resource for problem solving, and outside of any kind of supervisory employee or supervisory subordinate relationship. You're getting good feedback, critical feedback from a group of peers who have no stake in the matter other than that next time they'll have theirs, right? They'll have their turn if they have a problem that they need to be solved. One-on-one peer mentoring, identifying people who might be, you know, the quiet achiever, and you see them over there, but they're, you know, you might be able to amplify what they are doing. They're quietly toiling away, accomplishing all kinds of things for the company or for the organization, but nobody's noticing it. And so amplifying that person is a way to mentor them, but let them know, say, you know, I noticed that you're doing fantastic things over there, and I don't think other people know. May I mention this? May I amplify what you're doing? How can I help you to do this? And a lot of people aren't used to being noticed or amplified or lauded. And that mere act is an act of mentoring. And their acceptance of it creates the relationship. So don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to accept.
Right, and the credo talks about visibility too.
Yes.
So that person who's quiet, maybe encouraging them to be more visible.
Yes, and a lot of times we can't just take it for granted that they want to be more visible.
Mhm.
You know, and so I think Karen's really appropriate suggestion and being sensitive to that, to say, hey, may I, you know, bring a little bit more light on all that you're doing. Yeah, I've found myself in that position many times, because oftentimes I will be a little bit more outspoken. But there are also many times that, you know, maybe you're the fewer females in the room, and you know, it's sometimes it's hard to engage in that banter. So, you know, therefore it's really is important to help, you know, amplify the voice of other women, or whomever it may be, if you're noticing that their voice isn't heard.
Right.
It's also that cross-cultural sensitivity or knowledge
Yeah.
about the ask. And I get that, of course, because I work with the American Red Cross. And so we're trained in CPR and first aid. And the first question that you ask someone who's in distress is, may I help you? Right? If they are conscious, you need to ask permission. You say, I'm trained in first aid. May I help you? And so seeking that permission is important. If they're unconscious, then you should help them anyway, right?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
yeah, when they're conscious, you should always seek permission. And so I feel the same way about mentoring and offering assistance or help, to say, you know, I went the other way. To do it, of course, is to tell your own story about, oh, you know, I used to do that, or, you know, I kept my head down to get that done, and nobody noticed that I did it, and somebody else took credit for it, right? And so I wanted to let you know I experienced that, and I'm sharing that experience with you, and that's always a good way to move into that space.
Yeah, it's good to
Yeah.
be relatable, and it's also being very respectful.
Yes.
Yeah, very much so. One of the other things that just kind of came up for me is that, you know, a lot of times when I'm doing these personal branding exercises and whatnot, I find that a lot of times women don't feel comfortable stepping into their power, stepping into their greatness, stepping into all the talents that they bring. And so a mentorship can be that really nice reflection in the mirror, so that you maybe can see that in yourself a little bit better. And, you know, one of my mentors is this incredible man, Phil Schlein, who was the CEO of Macy's and on the board of Apple, and, you know, just an amazing venture capitalist. And he always took uh, just people in, and he especially focused on maybe people who were much more underrepresented. And he would be that reflection of, you know, I've been he's shown me that I have these talents and these gifts. So basically, in my mind, whenever I go into a critical meeting, I kind of put them in my pocket.
That's great.
Or I look to my side and I see Phil, I see Karen, or whomever, my mentors, and I step into a situation, right? And I step in with much greater power because I feel them by my side. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts of having incredible mentors.
Absolutely. Everybody needs an advocate. I have a question from the audience. What's the best way to formally define the mentorship when there's not a formal structure? How do I ask someone to be my mentor?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah, it's
I
important.
I think that when there is not a formal program and you identify the person you want to be your mentor, you do the research, you do the legwork first, and then you find common ground, and you also need to think about, well, why do I want this person to mentor me? How do I want this person to mentor me? And then you can present to that person after you've had an initial conversation, a get to know you kind of conversation. You then, because you'll know from that initial conversation, am I right that this is the right person for me, right? Oh, okay, I thought this might be the right person for me, but now that I've talked to this person with my list, right, I it's not a good fit, so I'm not going to follow up in this way, but follow up by saying thank you for your time, etc. But if you move forward in the next conversation, in the second conversation, ask, would you be my mentor? And what I mean by that is the following.
Yes.
That's up to you what that is. Could I run this by you? Would you help me problem solve in this way? Can I seek your wisdom? Or would you look at my resume? Or do you think what would I need to do if I wanted to be promoted to a particular job, right? If I wanted this job that I've identified in the company or in another company, how could this person help me to do that? Have your list ready to rock. So then you both know what the expectations are, and also be prepared for that person to say, I really don't have the time. For a person to say no, because that can happen.
Yep.
And that means wasn't meant to be. I know you hear that, and it's, it might sound trite, but it isn't. It's a real thing, and you would prefer that person to say no than to waste your time or to work against you in some way. So you really want them to, you want it to be mutual, because mentors get so much out of it. So if you shouldn't have to sell this, because then it's not the right person. That's the other part of it. But if you want to get what you need out of it, you need to really think about it first and make your criteria known, what your expectations are known. And I'm back to the SMART approach. Make sure all your goals follow the SMART approach, that they be specific, set up a timeline. Nobody wants to say, oh yeah, I want you to mentor me for the rest of my life, or, or for the next 5 months, or, say, oh, over the next 6 months, I have the following goals. How can, could you help me in these ways? Because you've identified what those ways are. It's not up to the mentor to figure out what those ways are. You can also divide up what your goals are, because just like there's a line in Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen about not thinking that you can get every need met from one other human being, right? Because we don't. So it's the same thing with our mentors. We don't get everything we need from one person. And so maybe you're asking too much of one person, and you can divide that up. I have this goal. I want to get a book deal by the end of the year. Who do I need to talk to? Who can help shepherd that for me? Who would be a great mentor in getting a literary agent? That sort of thing. Who can help prepare my synopsis and my book proposal? You might be looking at 3 different people there. So keep that in mind as well.
The last thing I would add, and I think that's awesome, amazing structure, Karen, is that as a mentee, you've done that research on the mentor. Figure out something that you can offer them.
Yes.
If you know them, you will figure out something. If you look at my profile, I make wine. I give wine to my mentors regularly if they're wine lovers. Or, or whatever it may be. I'm a marketing executive. I'm happy to review the next book outline that you have, whatever it may be. But 99% of the time, you can find something to offer to your mentor as well. And I think it should always feel like, truly treating it as a relationship in a give and take situation.
Such
Absolutely.
great advice, Karen and Nicole, and just that give and take, having a mutually beneficial kind of co-mentoring relationship is so important. And yet the mentee being really well prepared going in when it's a mentor-mentee, and doing the homework and making sure it's time really well spent for both sides. So such a great discussion. Thank you so much for giving of your time and just teaching us so much today. As you know, we have been very inspired by this discussion, going back a couple weeks, and just our desire to start a mentorship program for our community. So today we are excited to introduce our Women in Autonomy Mentorship Program. And we will put a link out there. You can see it on your screen here, but basically we'll have a questionnaire on our Women in Autonomy mentor page, and you can sign up to be a mentor or a mentee. And we also have a question on there inspired by these two about joining a peer mentoring group, because I think that's just a fantastic idea. Where you can meet with a group of people and just throw ideas off of them. And we will do our best to match you with somebody that best fits your goals and experience, or to put you in a group that matches. We're just getting this started. So, we hope that a lot of people sign up and that you tell your friends, and so that we can get more women helping women to move forward in their careers, and therefore our voices being better heard and represented in this industry. So with that being said, we have Karen and Nicole's LinkedIn here. Please connect with them. They've invited you to do so. We also have our Women in Autonomy, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of our social channels. We encourage you to follow us so you're up to date, not only on the programs, the events, but we're doing a lot of thought leadership opportunities for women, for publication, and for speaking opportunities. We're always coming up with new things to get you out there. So if you sign up for our newsletter, our mailing list, and all of our social channels, you will hear about them. So thank you again, Karen and Nicole. Thank you all for attending, and we will see you next time.